Stop begging for fairness, it makes you weak. Machiavelli's dark reality. There is a moment in every life when you finally understand something you have been refusing to admit. The world is not interested in being fair to you. And the day you stop begging for fairness is the day you start to see things as they truly are. This truth is harsh, uncomfortable, almost violent in its simplicity, yet it is the foundation of all real strength. You have been taught your entire life to hope that justice would eventually tilt in your favor, that the universe would reward your patience, that other people would wake up one day and suddenly decide to treat you with the respect you deserve. But Machiavelli whispers a darker reality, one that many never dare to confront. Fairness is not a natural law. It is a negotiation of power, perception, and position. And when you kneel before fairness, you kneel before a ghost. As you hear my voice, ask yourself, how many times have you suffered because you expected others to act as you would act? How many nights have you lost because you believed someone was supposed to choose truth over interest, loyalty over convenience, or kindness over strategy? Every disappointment you carry has a root in the same soil, the belief that fairness is an obligation. But fairness is not owed. It is taken, shaped, influenced, or enforced. And the sooner you accept this, the sooner you stop weakening yourself with illusions. This is not a call to become ruthless, nor a praise of cruelty. It is, instead, the invitation to step into a higher form of awareness, the one Machiavelli expected only the rarest minds to reach. When you detach from the expectation of fairness, you begin to observe human behavior as it is, not as you wish it were. You stop being shocked by betrayal, hurt by indifference, or paralyzed by injustice. You stop wasting your strength on emotional negotiations with reality. You grow sharper, more grounded, more lucid. You stop expecting the world to carry your burdens, and you learn to carry your own with a silent, unbreakable dignity. This video will reveal why begging for fairness drains your power, how it blinds your judgment, how it opens the door to manipulation, and how the strongest individuals, whether ancient rulers or ordinary people who learn the art of inner mastery, navigate a world that does not promise fairness. You will hear ideas that might confront you, unsettle you, or even anger you. But you will also feel something deeper awakening. The sense that you have always known this truth but never allowed yourself to accept it. And once you accept it, you will never move through life the same way again. Before we go further, write this sentence in the comments to seal your intention. I choose clarity over illusions. And if you feel that this message already speaks to something inside you, like the echo of a forgotten strength, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the end, because there is a revelation waiting, one that only those willing to see beyond fairness are ready to receive. For centuries, thinkers, rulers, and philosophers have grappled with one of the most unsettling truths about human existence. Fairness is not a natural equilibrium but an invention. A fragile agreement that collapses the moment power shifts. In ancient times, long before Machiavelli put ink to paper, societies understood that fairness was a luxury of stability, not a condition of life. Tribes survived by strength, strategy, and unity, not by expecting enemies to be fair. Kings rose and fell based on alliances, betrayals, and perception, not on moral balance. Yet as kingdoms grew, religion spread, and civilizations matured, people began constructing ideals to soothe the chaos of nature. Fairness became one of these ideals, beautiful, comforting, but ultimately fragile. Machiavelli, observing the turbulence of Renaissance Italy, saw through the illusion. He watched men perish because they believed fairness should guide political decisions. He watched leaders lose their thrones because they expected loyalty to outweigh ambition. He watched idealists crushed by pragmatists, and he realized something modern people often forget. Fairness is an aspiration, not a structure. He wrote about human nature not to corrupt it, but to expose it. He expected only a few to truly understand him, because his teachings require confronting something most people reject: the idea that the world moves according to forces much older and much colder than our moral expectations. And if you move through life expecting fairness, you will forever suffer at the hands of those who see the world more clearly than you do. Psychologically, the expectation of fairness becomes a prison. It makes you reactive. It makes you emotionally dependent on how others behave. It convinces you that the world owes you compensation for your effort, your goodness, your suffering. But Machiavelli understood human beings with an almost surgical clarity. People act in self-interest before they act in fairness. When fairness aligns with their interest, they support it. When it doesn't, they abandon it. This is not evil, it is nature. And yet, in today's world, we cling to the illusion more desperately than ever. Modern society, with its slogans of equality, justice, and moral righteousness, has softened people into believing that life must conform to these ideals. But the moment reality contradicts these expectations, people crumble. They feel betrayed by the world, by others, by life itself. They become resentful, powerless, disoriented because they have anchored their identity to an ideal instead of anchoring it to truth. This misalignment between belief and reality is the source of endless pain in our time. People expect fairness in relationships, loyalty in friendships, recognition at work, reciprocity in effort. And when they don't receive it, they interpret it as a cosmic injustice rather than a simple reflection of human nature. The knowledge Machiavelli offered has not been hidden. It has been ignored, rejected, even hated, because it strips away the comfort of moral expectation and replaces it with the cold clarity of reality. And yet, within that coldness lies freedom. When you let go of the illusion that fairness should govern the world, you stop being its victim. You begin to see the world as it is, and in doing so, you gain the power to navigate it with strategy, intelligence, and inner calm. That is the context, the philosophy, and the forgotten truth you must carry before we enter the deeper layers ahead. It is only when you stop expecting fairness that you begin to see the hidden architecture of power. This shift doesn't happen suddenly. It begins as a quiet disruption in your mind, a slow awakening where things you once interpreted as personal attacks or injustices start revealing themselves as patterns of human nature. You begin to understand that what you called unfairness was often just someone else choosing themselves over you. You stop reacting emotionally and start observing. You stop taking things personally and start recognizing motives. And slowly, you step into a new dimension of awareness where you no longer ask the world to be fair, you study how it works so you can move within it, without being broken. This is the doorway Machiavelli wanted you to find, and once you cross it, the illusions you once clung to will never return with the same power. The first truth Machiavelli forces you to confront is that fairness is not a universal principle. It is a temporary agreement sustained by mutual interest. When two people want something from each other, fairness appears. When their interests separate, fairness evaporates. This explains why someone can adore you one moment and ignore you the next. Not because they changed, but because their interest did. If you rely on fairness to maintain relationships, partnerships, or loyalty, you will constantly feel betrayed. People are fair when it benefits them. They become unfair when survival, ambition, ego, or emotion commands them. This does not mean people are wicked. It means people are human. The key is to stop assuming that fairness is the default and instead understand that it is the exception. When you embrace this truth, you stop over-investing in people who would never do the same for you. You stop giving beyond your capacity. You stop confusing your values with universal laws. You begin to see things with the cold clarity that gives you the power to protect yourself without resentment. The second truth is that fairness weakens you when you rely on it to validate your value. Many people collapse emotionally when they feel they've been treated unjustly because they believe that fairness determines worth. But waiting for fairness is waiting for permission to exist. Machiavelli teaches that your worth is not measured by how others treat you, but by how you respond to the way you are treated. If you crumble when the world is unfair, you have surrendered your power. The harshest situations in life are not meant to break you, they are meant to reveal you. When you detach your identity from fairness, you take back control of your emotional state. You no longer need people to recognize your effort in order to feel strong. You no longer need external validation to breathe. You become grounded in yourself. Anyone who expects fairness as confirmation of their importance is building their life on sand, and sand collapses. The third truth Machiavelli exposes is that when you beg for fairness, you reveal your weakness. The one who begs admits they have no leverage. They admit they need the other more than the other needs them. They admit they are powerless. This is why manipulators love people who expect fairness. They know those people are predictable, emotional, and easy to destabilize. When you ask someone to be fair, what you are truly saying is, "I have no other power except the hope that you will choose kindness." Machiavelli would tell you that this is the most dangerous position you can be in. Power does not respond to moral pleading. It responds to strength, to boundaries, to self-respect. You do not ask for fairness. You create conditions where being unfair to you becomes costly for others. You do this by becoming indispensable, by raising your value, by positioning yourself strategically. Fairness you beg for is worthless. Fairness you command is unbreakable. The fourth truth is that fairness blinds you to intention. When you assume people should act fairly, you project your values onto them. You assume that what is obvious to you must be obvious to them. But Machiavelli understood something essential. People judge themselves by their intentions, but others by their actions. When someone hurts you, they often justify it internally as necessary or unavoidable. When you hurt someone, you justify it with your reasoning. This asymmetry creates endless confusion. If you expect fairness, you assume everyone shares your moral compass. But they don't. They act based on their fears, desires, insecurities, traumas, or ambitions. When you stop expecting fairness, you start analyzing people more accurately. You pay attention to patterns, not promises. You notice inconsistencies, not excuses. You begin to understand who you should trust, who you should be cautious with, and who you should distance yourself from. Fairness becomes irrelevant. Clarity becomes essential. The fifth truth is that fairness limits your capacity to grow. Many people avoid difficult decisions or uncomfortable truths because they believe the world should be fair eventually. They stay in toxic relationships believing fairness will one day make things right. They stay at jobs that drain their soul because fairness should reward loyalty. They endure disrespect because fairness should correct the imbalance. But fairness does not fix what you refuse to walk away from. Growth begins the moment you stop waiting for the world to treat you well and start treating yourself with the respect you have been begging for. When you do this, you reclaim your authority. You stop being a spectator in your own life and become its architect. So let me ask you now directly, which part of your life have you been waiting for fairness to fix, and what would happen if you stopped waiting today? Write your answer in the comments. The sixth truth is that fairness makes you passive. When you believe you deserve fairness, you sit still, hoping reality will adjust to your preferences. You stay where you are, expecting the universe to intervene. But Machiavelli understood that life rewards movement, not waiting. Inaction is the silent killer of potential. When you release the expectation of fairness, you begin to act. You start building, creating, positioning, improving. You stop expecting compensation for past pain and start investing in your future strength. Passivity evaporates. You move with intentionality instead of hope, strategy instead of wishful thinking. This transformation is not loud. It is silent, disciplined, almost sacred. The seventh truth is that fairness creates emotional fragility. When you rely on fairness to feel balanced, every small injustice becomes an earthquake. Someone cuts in front of you and you feel attacked. Someone forgets you and you feel invalidated. Someone disrespects you and you feel shattered. But this fragility is not caused by events. It is caused by the false belief that events should align with your values. When you release this belief, you develop emotional resilience. You begin to move through life with a stable inner center. You no longer break at the slightest wind. You become someone others can't easily destabilize, manipulate, or provoke. You step into the calm power that Machiavelli believed belonged only to those who understood human nature deeply. The eighth truth is that fairness distorts your judgment. When you expect fairness, you assume you are seeing the full picture, but you are not. You see what you want to see. You overlook signs. You ignore red flags. You justify behavior that should alarm you. You hold on to situations long after they have proven themselves harmful. But when fairness is no longer your lens, your vision sharpens. You see people's choices as data instead of betrayals. You see situations as information instead of personal attacks. You become a better decision maker. You stop misjudging relationships, opportunities, and threats. You gain the clarity that allows you to choose wisely rather than emotionally. The ninth truth is that fairness keeps you attached to people who diminish you. Many stay in relationships, romantic, familial, or professional, because they believe fairness should eventually restore balance. They tolerate disrespect because fairness should correct it. But Machiavelli teaches that imbalance is rarely corrected. It is reinforced by your tolerance. When you stop expecting fairness, you stop giving your energy to those who do not value it. You stop negotiating with people who drain you. You step away from those who take without giving. And this is when your life begins to change, because you finally recognize who deserves access to you. The 10th truth is that fairness restricts your strength. When you expect the world to be fair, you hide your power to avoid conflict. You silence yourself to avoid tension. You shrink yourself to avoid being judged. But when you stop expecting fairness, you step into your authentic strength. You speak clearly. You move with intention. You set boundaries. You hold yourself with dignity. You become someone who is not seeking permission to exist, but claiming your place in the world. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because fear is superior, but because respect is essential. And those who do not expect fairness command respect effortlessly. They are not waiting for anyone to validate them. The 11th truth is that fairness masks the real structure of conflict. People believe conflict arises from disagreement, but Machiavelli knew conflict arises from interest conflicting, overlapping, or competing interests. When you expect fairness, you misinterpret conflict as personal hostility rather than natural human competition. But when you understand that interests govern behavior, you stop being surprised when people choose themselves. You stop expecting harmony where competition exists. And most importantly, You learn to navigate conflict strategically, rather than emotionally. The 12th truth is that fairness keeps you from understanding power. Fairness is the story the powerful tell the weak to maintain order. It is the story parents tell children, teachers tell students, governments tell citizens. But behind every structure of power, fairness is secondary to necessity. When you understand power, you stop begging for fairness and begin building leverage. You learn to negotiate, to position yourself, to make choices that strengthen your influence. Power is not evil. It is neutral. It becomes dangerous only in the hands of those who misunderstand it. The 13th truth is that fairness weakens your capacity to adapt. Life changes, people change, circumstances shift. But when you expect fairness, you cling to outdated expectations. You hold on to the past. You replay old narratives. You become emotionally rigid. But when you release fairness, you become fluid. You adjust quickly. You adapt without breaking. You become someone who can navigate uncertainty with quiet confidence. This is the essence of Machiavellian wisdom. The flexible survive, the rigid shatter. The 14th truth is that fairness leads you to overestimate the morality of others. You assume people will act based on what is right, but people act based on what is advantageous, comfortable, or emotionally satisfying. When you see this truth, you stop projecting your own goodness onto others. You stop making yourself vulnerable to those who cannot reciprocate your intentions. You stop misunderstanding human nature. You stop being shocked by behavior that once felt incomprehensible. The 15th truth is that fairness keeps you from becoming strategic. Strategy begins with understanding reality as it is, not as you wish it were. If you want a powerful life, you must be able to anticipate human behavior, read between the lines, understand hidden motives, and calculate outcomes. But if fairness is your expectation, strategy becomes impossible. You are blinded by the belief that people should act a certain way. When you let go of this belief, you step into a higher form of intelligence. You begin to think like someone who shapes outcomes, not someone who suffers them. This is the first half of the deeper exploration. The foundation Machiavelli laid for those willing to confront the uncomfortable truths of human nature. And now that you have stepped into this clarity, the second part will take you further into the hidden mechanisms, the paradoxes, and the shadows that hold the final pieces of this liberation. When you cross the threshold of the first truths, a strange stillness enters your mind. You begin to see patterns you once ignored, and life stops surprising you in the same painful ways. But this is only the beginning. The deeper reality, the one Machiavelli reserved for the rare, the perceptive, the inwardly strong, is far more unsettling. It reveals not only why fairness is an illusion, but why clinging to it prevents you from understanding the forces that truly shape human behavior. This next level of awareness is not meant to make you cynical. It is meant to make you sovereign. Once you step into these deeper insights, you stop reacting to the world and begin orchestrating your place within it. You become someone who no longer suffers the chaos of others but moves through life with a precision that feels almost prophetic. The first deeper insight is that fairness is not only a social illusion, it is a psychological anesthetic. Human beings crave predictability because it eases anxiety. Fairness is the story we tell ourselves to cope with the unpredictability of life. We want to believe that good actions will bring good outcomes, that patience will be rewarded, that loyalty will be reciprocated. But the mind seeks patterns that do not always exist, and when the world contradicts those expectations, the shock destabilizes us. This is why many people collapse when they face betrayal or injustice, not because the event is unbearable, but because it shatters the illusion they relied on to feel safe. When you detach from the expectation of fairness, you remove the anesthetic and allow yourself to feel the full reality of life. At first, it burns. But then, clarity replaces fear. You stop needing the world to be predictable to feel grounded. You begin to trust your ability to navigate uncertainty rather than trust the world to behave predictably. The second deeper insight is that fairness is often a mask that hides the true dynamics of desire. People claim to want fairness, but what they really want is advantage. They want the promotion, the affection, the opportunity, the recognition. They use fairness as a rhetorical tool to justify why they should receive what they desire. Machiavelli understood this duality. People speak of fairness when it benefits them and abandon it when it restrains them. This is not hypocrisy. It is instinct. Understanding this allows you to see through the narratives people use to disguise their intentions. It teaches you to observe not what people say, but what they pursue. And in a world driven by desire, those who are honest with themselves about their own motives, and who can read the motives of others move with unparalleled precision. The third deeper insight is that fairness is incompatible with power. Power is not distributed equally, and it never has been. The moment you assume fairness should govern power, you misunderstand the nature of influence. Power flows where value, leverage, and necessity meet. Those who expect fairness believe they should be rewarded simply for being good, loyal, or patient. But Machiavelli would tell you that the world rewards those who position themselves strategically, not those who wait politely. This does not mean you must dominate others. It means you must understand the currents that determine influence. When you stop assuming fairness should guide power, you begin to understand why certain people rise and others remain overlooked. You see why assertiveness is respected and passivity is ignored. You see why opportunities gravitate toward those who create movement, rather than those who wait for recognition. The fourth deeper insight is that fairness creates emotional illusions that prevent true self-understanding. Many people blame unfairness for their failures, believing the world is working against them. But in truth, they often sabotage themselves with fear, hesitation, self-doubt, or a lack of clarity. Fairness becomes the excuse that hides their own patterns. It is easier to blame circumstances than to confront internal conflict. Machiavelli believed that the rarest form of strength is the courage to face one's own limitations without flinching. When you stop clinging to fairness, you stop using it as a shield against self-reflection. You begin to see where you hesitated, where you settled, where you avoided discomfort. This clarity liberates you. It allows you to grow intentionally rather than reactively. It teaches you that your life is not a consequence of fairness, but a consequence of choices made or avoided. The fifth deeper insight is that fairness blinds you to hidden hierarchies. Every social environment, work, family, friendships, communities operates with invisible structures. These hierarchies are not always based on morality, intelligence, or effort. They are based on charisma, confidence, timing, need, and psychological dominance. People who expect fairness assume these structures do not exist, and because of that, they are constantly blindsided by how decisions are made. But when you release fairness, you begin to perceive the invisible architecture of influence. You notice who commands attention, who shapes opinions, who holds emotional authority, who is feared, who is respected, and who is ignored. This awareness gives you the blueprint of the terrain you are navigating. So let me ask you, as a test of your awakening, which invisible hierarchy in your life have you been pretending not to see? Comment your answer once you recognize it. The sixth deeper insight is that fairness is used as a tool of control by those who benefit from your obedience. Systems, institutions, and even relationships rely on the moral pressure of fairness to keep you compliant. Be fair often means don't challenge the balance that benefits me. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Those in advantageous positions maintain their advantage by convincing others that fairness is sacred. But true power belongs to those who understand when to question the narrative, when to disrupt the expectation, when to renegotiate the terms. When you stop idolizing fairness, you start negotiating your place in the world with strength rather than guilt. You become a participant, not a pawn. The seventh deeper insight is that fairness keeps you trapped in emotional dependency. Many people rely on fairness to soothe their insecurities. They want others to validate them, acknowledge them, apologize to them, compensate them. This creates a psychological dependence on external approval. Machiavelli would argue that such dependence is a form of internal slavery. The moment you stop expecting fairness, you start reclaiming your autonomy. You stop needing apologies to heal. You stop needing validation to feel whole. You stop needing recognition to feel legitimate. You become grounded in your own worth, not in the world's reaction to it. The eighth deeper insight is that fairness interferes with your ability to read danger. When you assume people should act fairly, you overlook warning signs. You forgive too quickly. You trust too easily. You underestimate threats. But when fairness is no longer your expectation, you begin to sense danger before it strikes. You recognize when someone's tone shifts. You notice when their motives change. You detect jealousy, resentment, insecurity, and ambition long before they manifest as harm. This awareness is not paranoia. It is intelligence. It is the ability to navigate human complexity without being blindsided. The ninth deeper insight is that fairness keeps you from embracing the paradoxes of human nature. People can love you and still hurt you. They can admire you and still envy you. They can support you and still act in their own interest. When fairness is your expectation, you interpret these contradictions as betrayals. But when you accept the complexity of human nature, you stop expecting purity in intentions. You understand that contradictions are not flaws, they are the fabric of human psychology. This acceptance brings peace. You stop forcing people into moral categories and begin seeing them as whole, multidimensional beings. The 10th deeper insight is that fairness undermines your ability to use silence and restraint strategically. People who expect fairness often feel compelled to justify themselves, defend themselves, or fight for recognition. But Machiavelli understood the power of silence. Silence unsettles those who expect you to react emotionally. Silence forces others to reveal their intentions. Silence gives you space to think. Silence allows you to observe rather than participate. When you release fairness, you release the impulse to explain yourself to people who are not acting in good faith. Your restraint becomes your shield. Your silence becomes your advantage. The 11th deeper insight is that fairness prevents you from understanding the cost of kindness. True kindness is powerful, but only when it is intentional. When kindness is rooted in the expectation of fairness, it becomes a transaction. You give in order to receive. You help in order to be appreciated. But when you understand that fairness is not guaranteed, your kindness becomes pure. You offer it without attachment. You give it without needing reciprocity. This does not weaken you. It strengthens you. It frees you from resentment and teaches you to choose where to invest your generosity wisely. The 12th deeper insight is that fairness clouds your perception of time. Many people believe fairness will manifest eventually, that patience will automatically yield reward. But Machiavelli knew that time is not neutral. Time amplifies what you feed it and destroys what you neglect. If you rely on fairness, you wait. If you rely on strategy, you act. The future belongs to those who move, not those who wait to be noticed. When you stop expecting fairness, you stop wasting the years of your life waiting for life to balance out. You start creating your own momentum. You start positioning yourself for opportunities instead of expecting them to fall into your lap. You step into the timeline you were meant to shape. The 13th deeper insight is that fairness keeps you from embracing your shadow. Every human has a side they hide: the ambition, the anger, the fear, the desire for power. People who expect fairness suppress their shadow because it feels contradictory to their moral ideal. But Machiavelli understood that your shadow is not your enemy. It is your untapped strength. It gives you the courage to take risks, the clarity to set boundaries, the drive to pursue your goals. When you stop expecting fairness, you stop suppressing your shadow. You integrate it. You learn to use its energy without letting it dominate you. This integration gives you an inner solidity that nothing external can destabilize. The 14th deeper insight is that fairness blinds you to the reality of scarcity. Not everyone can win. Not everyone can be chosen. Not everyone can succeed in the same way at the same time. When fairness is your expectation, you deny scarcity and become unprepared for competition. But when you acknowledge scarcity, you prepare strategically. You sharpen your skills. You elevate your value. You position yourself where your strengths can shine. You stop waiting to be selected and start selecting the environments where you can thrive. The 15th deeper insight is that fairness prevents you from accepting the profound truth that life is not symmetrical. Some people will have doors open that you never had. Some people will start ahead of you. Some people will receive advantages you will never see. But this asymmetry is not meant to defeat you, it is meant to challenge you. When you stop expecting fairness, you stop comparing your path to others. You stop resenting what you did not receive. You begin to focus on what you can build, what you can influence, what you can shape. This freedom from comparison is one of the most powerful transformations a person can experience. It opens the door to a life lived on your own terms, with your own rhythm, with your own strength. As you absorb these deeper insights, you may feel something shifting inside you, a growing clarity, a quiet strength, a sense of distance from the illusions that once governed your emotions. This is the beginning of sovereignty. And in the next section, we will turn toward the practical realm, where clarity becomes action and insight becomes transformation. Once you have seen the truth beneath the illusion of fairness, a new question emerges. What do you do with this knowledge? Awareness means nothing without transformation. Machiavelli never intended his insights to remain philosophical. He wanted them to be applied, embodied, lived. The purpose of understanding human nature is not to judge people or withdraw from the world. It is to navigate life with clarity, strategy, and emotional independence. And now that your eyes are open, the first step is learning how to move differently. You cannot return to the old patterns of waiting for fairness, hoping for reciprocity, or relying on moral expectations to guide outcomes. These habits belong to your past self, the one who believed the world owed something. From this moment forward, your power comes from deliberate action, not passive hope. What follows are not just techniques, but shifts of consciousness, changes in how you think, how you react, how you position yourself in the world. If you apply them consistently, they will reshape your inner structure, your relationships, your sense of identity, and the way you make choices. They will allow you to walk through life with a quiet confidence, no longer seeking fairness but creating your own path where clarity replaces illusion. The first principle of practical transformation is mastering emotional detachment. This does not mean numbing yourself or becoming cold. It means learning to observe without being consumed. Emotional detachment allows you to evaluate situations based on reality, not desire. When someone treats you unfairly, your first instinct might be to feel insulted or wounded. But emotional detachment gives you a few seconds of distance enough to see the motive behind the action. Instead of reacting impulsively, you analyze, what does this person gain from this behavior? What does it reveal about their fear, insecurity, or ambition? This perspective removes the sting from unfairness and transforms it into information. A simple exercise is this. The next time you feel triggered, imagine stepping back mentally and watching the moment like a scene unfolding in front of you. Ask yourself what the behavior reveals. This small shift turns emotional storms into strategic clarity and teaches you that your power lies not in controlling others, but in controlling your perception. The second principle is developing a strong personal boundary system. People who expect fairness often have weak boundaries because they assume others should naturally respect them. But boundaries are not moral, they are structural. They are the lines you draw to protect your time, your energy, your dignity, and your peace. Creating boundaries means learning to say no without guilt, walking away without apology, and refusing to negotiate with those who show patterns of disrespect. A powerful technique is to identify the 3 areas of your life where your boundaries collapse the most, perhaps with family, with romantic partners, with coworkers, or with friends. For each area, write the one behavior you can no longer tolerate. Then practice enforcing that boundary silently and consistently. You do not need long explanations. You do not need to justify. You simply withdraw access from those who violate the boundary. Over time, people around you will adapt or disappear. Either outcome strengthens you. The third principle is cultivating internal validation. People who crave fairness often crave acknowledgement. They want others to see their effort, recognize their goodness, or reward their sacrifices. But this dependency weakens your spirit. You must learn to validate yourself, to see your own worth, to honor your own choices, to celebrate your own progress. One practical exercise is to end each day by acknowledging 3 things you did well, even if no one noticed. This rewires your mind to derive strength from within rather than chasing it from the world. Machiavelli believed the strongest individuals were those who relied on themselves first, because they could not be destabilized by neglect or manipulation. When you validate yourself, you become emotionally independent. You stop begging for fairness because you no longer need the world to confirm who you are. The fourth principle is the practice of strategic silence. Excessive talking weakens your influence. When you explain yourself too much, justify yourself too much, or reveal your intentions too quickly, you give others the tools to manipulate you. Silence, on the other hand, creates mystery. It forces others to reveal themselves. It protects your inner world. Use silence intentionally. When someone disrespects you, do not rush to confront them emotionally. When someone lies to you, do not immediately demand the truth. When someone plays with your boundaries, do not react impulsively. Let silence do the work. It makes others uncomfortable. It forces them to reconsider. It makes your presence heavier and your absence more significant. Silence is not passivity. It is a weapon of the wise. The fifth principle is learning to interpret patterns rather than words. People lie, but patterns do not. Fairness relies on promises. Power relies on observation. Instead of believing what people say about their intentions, watch how they behave over time. Do they show consistency? Do they follow through? Do they repeat the same harmful behaviors despite apologies? One practical method is to keep mental or written notes of the patterns you observe in people. When someone repeatedly shows you who they are, believe the pattern. This technique protects you from manipulation and teaches you to navigate relationships with emotional intelligence, rather than naive trust. The sixth principle is mastering selective generosity. Many people give too much to the wrong people in the wrong situations for the wrong reasons. This creates resentment and drains your energy. Machiavelli believed generosity should be used strategically, not compulsively. It should strengthen alliances, reward loyalty, or support those who truly value your effort. One powerful exercise is to identify the top 3 people who give energy to your life and the top 3 who drain it. Then consciously shift your generosity toward those who reciprocate. Generosity without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Generosity with intention becomes influence. The seventh principle is learning to leave gracefully. People who expect fairness often stay too long in harmful situations, hoping things will balance themselves. But knowing when to leave relationships, jobs, conversations, friendships is one of the greatest forms of wisdom. Leaving gracefully means stepping away without drama, without needing closure, without seeking vindication. It means valuing your peace more than the illusion of fairness. When the energy of a situation becomes stagnant or toxic, your departure becomes your declaration of self-respect. A simple ritual is this. Whenever you feel torn between staying and leaving, ask yourself which choice aligns with the strongest version of you. The answer will always be clear if you are honest. The eighth principle is becoming indispensable, not by begging for recognition, but by cultivating rare skills and a powerful presence. In a world that is not fair, value determines your influence. The more value you bring, the less anyone can afford to be unfair to you. This requires discipline, learning, self-investment, and patience. Identify the skills that elevate your position: communication, problem-solving, emotional intelligence, leadership, creativity, adaptability, and sharpen them relentlessly. When you become someone who creates solutions, others treat you with respect not out of fairness but out of necessity. The ninth principle is aligning your environment with your new mindset. You cannot live a life of clarity surrounded by people who thrive on illusion. Audit your relationships, your habits, your digital consumption, and your mental diet. Does your environment strengthen your clarity or sabotage it? One powerful technique is to intentionally create moments of solitude. 15 minutes of silence each morning or evening where you disconnect from noise and reconnect with direction. During these moments, ask yourself the question, what is the most strategic move I can make this week? This ritual trains your mind to think ahead, rather than react. The 10th principle is becoming comfortable with being misunderstood. Once you stop expecting fairness, your behavior will confuse people who still depend on illusions. They may call you distant, cold, or detached. But this misunderstanding is not your burden to carry. It is the price of clarity. Machiavelli believed that those who lead themselves first are rarely understood by those who rely on external validation. Let people misunderstand you. Let them project their insecurities. Your job is not to please the world, it is to walk your path with integrity and strength. A useful exercise is to practice responding to criticism with calm, short sentences, or silence. This stops you from over-explaining and reinforces your emotional independence. The 11th principle is to develop a strategic relationship with your shadow. Your shadow, your ambition, your assertiveness, your desire for recognition contains energy that can either destroy you or elevate you. People who expect fairness suppress their shadow, believing it is wrong. But integrating your shadow gives you psychological balance. It gives you the courage to say no, to take risks, to pursue your goals. A powerful exercise is this. Whenever you hesitate because you fear judgment, ask yourself whether the hesitation comes from your highest self or from fear. If it comes from fear, move forward anyway. This builds inner strength and aligns your shadow with your purpose. The 12th principle is learning to negotiate. Fairness is passive. Negotiation is active. Life is a series of negotiations, spoken or unspoken. Your salary, your respect, your opportunities, your treatment, the dynamics in your relationships, all are negotiated. Machiavelli believed that those who understand negotiation understand power. To practice negotiation, start small. Ask for better conditions, propose alternatives, state your needs calmly. Over time, you will develop the confidence to negotiate larger aspects of your life. Negotiation teaches you that you can influence outcomes instead of waiting for fairness to adjust them. 13th principle is embracing long-term thinking. Unfairness often triggers impulsive reactions, anger, withdrawal, revenge. But these reactions weaken your strategy. Machiavelli believed that long-term thinking gives you a vision that small injustices cannot derail. A powerful technique is to write where you want to be 1 year from now, then identify what must change in your mindset to get there. This shifts your focus from temporary unfairness to permanent transformation. When your mind is anchored to a long horizon, you stop fixating on short-term discomfort and start building long-term strength. The 14th principle is to protect your inner circle. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, your vulnerabilities, or your dreams. Fairness convinces you that being open makes you good. Strategy teaches you that selective openness makes you safe. Choose 2 or 3 people in your life whom you trust completely. Share your deeper thoughts only with them. Everyone else receives measured access. This protects you from betrayal and preserves your energy for those who genuinely value you. The 15th principle is to train yourself to respond, not react. Reacting is emotional. Responding is strategic. When someone disrespects you, reacting engages your ego. Responding engages your wisdom. A simple method is to take a silent breath before answering any emotionally charged comment or behavior. This creates a psychological gap, a moment where you choose clarity over impulse. Over time, this habit becomes natural. You stop feeding conflicts. You stop escalating unnecessary battles. You start mastering your presence. These practices are not temporary techniques. They are transformations of identity. When you integrate them, you become someone who is no longer weakened by unfairness, no longer shattered by betrayal, no longer controlled by illusions. You become someone rooted, grounded, steady, a person who sees life as it is and moves through it with a dignity that cannot be shaken. And once you begin living this way, you will discover the quiet, hidden reward that Machiavelli hinted at but never fully revealed. Clarity becomes its own power. It becomes your shield and your guide. It becomes the foundation of a life where you are no longer waiting for the world to treat you well. You are building a world where you treat yourself with the respect you always deserved. In the end, everything you have learned in this journey leads back to a truth so simple, yet so difficult for most people to accept. The world does not owe you fairness, balance, reciprocity, loyalty, or justice. And the sooner you stop waiting for these things, the sooner you stop weakening yourself with illusions. This realization is not meant to harden you into coldness, but to awaken you into clarity. Clarity does not remove your humanity, it refines it. It does not destroy your compassion, it strengthens it. It does not make you cruel, it makes you sovereign. Machiavelli understood that the greatest suffering in life comes not from what happens, but from what we expect. And when your expectations are built on illusions, suffering is inevitable. But clarity frees you. It reshapes your relationship to the world, to people, to power, and most importantly, to yourself. Look at the path you have taken through this video. You began by confronting the painful truth that fairness is not a natural law, but a fleeting agreement shaped by interest, perception, and power. You explored the historical and psychological roots of fairness, understanding why it comforts the mind but blinds the spirit. You walked through the first set of principles that stripped away illusions one by one, revealing why fairness weakens you when you cling to it and strengthens you when you release it. Then you descended deeper into the shadows, the paradoxes, the hidden hierarchies, the unspoken rules of human nature that only a few ever dare to study. And finally, you learned to transform clarity into action, detachment, boundaries, strategic silence, selective generosity, observation, negotiation, resilience, and sovereignty. These are not just techniques. They are the architecture of inner power. Now, as you stand at the end of this journey, a new question rises. What will you do with this clarity? Because clarity is not meant to be admired like a piece of philosophy. It is meant to be lived. It demands embodiment. It demands courage. It demands that you stop clinging to old stories of how life should be and begin stepping boldly into how life actually is. It demands that you stop waiting for fairness to fix what only your strength can change. It demands that you stop handing your emotional power to people who have no intention of protecting it. It demands that you stop letting illusions guide your decisions, your relationships, your identity. This is the moment where many people retreat. They fear clarity because it forces them to confront their patterns, the places where they waited too long, tolerated too much, trusted too easily, gave too generously, hoped too blindly. But clarity is not here to shame you, it is here to free you. It is here to turn your past pain into wisdom, your past betrayals into discernment, your past disappointments into strength. When you let go of fairness as your guiding expectation, you begin to reclaim the authority over your own life. You stop reacting to the world and start responding to it. You stop being shaped by circumstances and start shaping them. You stop asking the world to validate you and start validating yourself. This is what sovereignty feels like, not dominance, not aggression, but inner grounding, inner firmness, inner peace. And perhaps the greatest transformation happens in your relationships. When you stop expecting fairness, you stop being blindsided by human nature. You no longer enter relationships with naive trust or unrealistic hopes. You enter them with awareness, discernment, and self-respect. You learn to love consciously, not blindly. You learn to forgive without forgetting. You learn to walk away without guilt. You learn to value yourself without needing to be chosen. You learn to give without becoming depleted. You learn to receive without becoming dependent. And in that balance, you find relationships that are not built on illusion but on truth. Relationships that grow because you are no longer giving from emptiness, but from strength. On a deeper level, letting go of fairness allows you to walk into the world with a new kind of calm. You no longer panic when someone mistreats you. You analyze. You no longer crumble when someone betrays you. You observe. You no longer lose your identity when someone rejects you. You redirect. You no longer rush to defend yourself. You choose silence or strategy depending on the situation. You no longer wait for life to reward you. You create your own momentum. This calmness, this internal steadiness, is what Machiavelli believed few would ever cultivate, not because it is inaccessible, but because it requires the courage to detach from comforting illusions. And here lies the silent revelation I promised you at the beginning. Once you stop expecting fairness, You become impossible to control. No manipulation can destabilize you. No injustice can define you. No betrayal can destroy you. No rejection can diminish you. No disappointment can break you. You become someone who sees clearly, chooses intentionally, moves strategically, and stands firmly in your own power. The world may still be unfair, but it can no longer shake your foundation. You become a force, not loud, not aggressive, but quietly undeniable. This quiet strength is what separates the ordinary from the sovereign. Most people move through life reacting, hoping, begging. You, however, are building something different. You are building a mind that sees through noise. You are building a heart that does not collapse under pressure. You are building a presence that demands respect without ever raising its voice. You are becoming someone who no longer relies on the world to give you what you need, because you have learned to cultivate it within yourself. And this is where true power begins. The final step is integration. Power is not created in moments of insight, it is created in daily choices. Every day, you will face situations that test your clarity. Unfairness, disrespect, silence, indifference, betrayal, manipulation, neglect. These moments are not meant to break you. They are meant to refine you. Each time you respond with clarity instead of expectation, you strengthen the new foundation within you. Each time you hold a boundary, you reinforce your dignity. Each time you choose silence over emotional reaction, you elevate your presence. Each time you walk away from what drains you, you honor your worth. And each time you act strategically rather than impulsively, you step closer to the sovereign version of yourself. You may be wondering, does this mean I must become cold or unfeeling? No, quite the opposite. When you stop expecting fairness, you stop wasting emotional energy on illusions, which frees you to feel more deeply, more honestly, more cleanly. Your compassion becomes purer because it is no longer tied to expectations. Your love becomes healthier because it is no longer entangled with need. Your kindness becomes more powerful because it is no longer performed in exchange for validation. You become emotionally richer, not emotionally poorer. You become more human, not less. And now, as we reach the end of this exploration, I invite you to reflect on yourself, your life, your relationships, your story. Where have you been waiting for fairness? Where have you hoped someone would suddenly change? Where have you tolerated too much because you believed balance would eventually return? Where have you held yourself back because you expected the world to notice you? Where have you dimmed your strength because you feared judgment? These are not questions to burden you, they are questions to liberate you. Because once you answer them, you reclaim your power. Before you leave, I ask you to comment one final sentence, a declaration of your transformation. I no longer wait for fairness. I walk with clarity. Write it not for me, but for yourself. And if this video has awakened something in you, something ancient, something sharp, something true, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected. There are more truths waiting for you, more insights buried beneath the surface of human nature, more keys to unlocking the strength you have carried in silence for years. You have taken a step today that most people never take. You have seen beyond illusion. You have touched clarity. And though the world may remain unfair, you are no longer weakened by it. You are rising above it. You are becoming sovereign. And from this moment on, may your steps be guided not by expectations, but by insight. Not by hope, but by strategy. Not by illusion, but by unshakable clarity.